Caesar's campaigns in Gaul are some of the best documented campaigns in Roman history because Caesar himself wrote what he called commentaries about the war as it ongoing. Meant to document Caesar's campaigns in his own words and maintain support in Rome for his military operations and career, he produced some 10 volumes covering operations in Gaul from 58 to 52 BC. The account is naturally partial to Caesar, his defeats are excused and victories highlighted, but it is almost the sole source for events in Gaul in this period. The tribes of Gaul were civilized and wealthy, constituting what is known to archaeologists as the Latine culture. Most had contact with Roman merchants and some, such as the Aedui, who were governed by republics, had enjoyed stable political alliances with Rome in the past. During the 1st century, parts of Gaul were becoming urbanized, which concentrated wealth and population centers, inadvertently making Roman conquest easier. Though the Romans considered the Gauls to be barbarians, their cities mirrored those of the Mediterranean. They struck coins and traded extensively with Rome, providing iron, grain, and many slaves. The Romans realized the Gauls were a powerful fighting force and considered some of the most barbaric tribes to be the fiercest warriors. The Roman army was extremely disciplined, kept standing between conflicts, and made mostly of heavy infantry. Any auxiliary units were fielded from the less disciplined Roman allies, which as the war progressed would include some Gauls. Unlike the Romans, the Gauls were a warrior culture. They prized acts of bravery and individual courage. Frequent raiding of neighboring tribes kept their fighting skills sharp. Compared to the Romans, the Gauls carried longer swords and had far superior cavalry. While the Gauls had much more flair in combat, such as fighting in intricately decorated armor, or even in the nude, the superior discipline and formation of the Romans generally gave them an advantage in hand-to-hand fighting. The Romans respected and feared the Gallic tribes. In 390 BC, the Gauls had sacked Rome, which left an existential dread of barbarian conquest the Romans never forgot. In 121 BC, Rome conquered a group of southern Gauls and established the province of Transalpine Gaul in the conquered lands. Only 50 years before the Gallic Wars, in 109 BC, Italy had been invaded from the north and saved by Gaius Marius, uncle and father figure to Julius Caesar, only after several bloody and costly battles. When the governor of Transalpine Gaul, Metellus Sylla, died unexpectedly, the province was awarded to Caesar at the suggestion of Pompey. In the law granting him command of the provinces, Caesar was given a 5-year term as proconsul. Caesar had 4 veteran legions under his direct command initially: Legio 7, Legio 8, Legio 9 Hispana, and Legio X. As he had been governor of Hispania Ulterior in 61 BC and had campaigned successfully with them against the Lusitanians, Caesar knew most, perhaps even all, of the legions personally. The Helvetii were a confederation of about 5 related Gallic tribes that lived on the Swiss plateau. They wished to migrate into Transalpine Gaul. Caesar entertained the request, but ultimately denied it. The Gauls turned north instead, entirely avoiding Roman lands. The threat to Rome was seemingly over, but Caesar led his army over the border and attacked the Helvetii unprovoked. In the ensuing Battle of Bibracte, the Gauls and Romans fought for the better part of the day. After a hotly contested battle, the Romans eventually gained victory. Caesar then turned his attention to the Germanic Suebi, whom he also wished to conquer. The Senate had declared Ariovistus, king of the Suebi, a friend and ally of the Roman people in 59 BC, so Caesar needed a convincing casus belli to betray the Suebi. They met under a truce at a knoll outside of town. The truce was violated when Germanic horsemen edged towards the knoll and threw stones at Caesar's mounted escort. The next morning Caesar assembled his allied troops in front of the second camp and advanced his legions in towards Ariovistus. Caesar was victorious in the ensuing battle due in large part to the charge made by Publius Crassus, son of Marcus Crassus. In 1 year he had defeated 2 of Rome's most feared enemies. After this busy campaigning season, he returned to Transalpine Gaul to deal with the non-military aspects of his governorship. At this point it is possible he had already decided he would conquer all of Gaul. A powerful Belgic tribe, the Nervii, set up an ambush along the river Samba, lying in wait for the Romans. In an uncharacteristic move for Caesar, he made a serious tactical error by not setting up an infantry screen to protect the entrenching force. The situation was so critical Caesar took up his shield and joined the front line of the legion. His mere presence greatly increased morale, and he ordered his men to form a defensive square to open the ranks and protect them from all sides. Caesar's cockiness had nearly ended in defeat, but the legion's experience combined with his personal role in combat turned a disaster into an incredible victory. He wintered his troops in northern Gaul, where the tribes were forced to house and feed them. With his political allies, but at the same time rivals Pompey and Crassus running for consulship, Caesar needed to stay in the public eye. His solution was to cross 2 water bodies no Roman army had attempted before, the Rhine and the English Channel. Caesar led the first Roman army across the Rhine in a lightning campaign that lasted just 18 days. Caesar's first trip into Britain was less of a full-scale invasion than an expedition. He took only 2 legions from his army, withdrawing after a short time. Caesar's approach towards Britain in 54 BC was far more comprehensive and successful than his initial expedition. New ships had been built over the winter, and Caesar now took 5 legions and 2,000 cavalry. Caesar extracted payment of grain, slaves, and an annual tribute to Rome. Previously, the Gauls had not been united, which had made them easy to conquer. But this changed in 53 BC, when Caesar announced that Gaul was now being treated as a Roman province, subject to Roman laws and religion. A threat to their sacred lands was an issue that finally united the Gauls. Over the winter the charismatic king of the Arverni tribe, Vercingetorix, assembled an unprecedented grand coalition of Gauls. He assembled some 70,000 to 100,000 warriors. Caesar laid siege to him at Alesia. Over the span of a month, the Romans built some 25 miles 40 kilometers of fortifications. These included a trench for soldiers, an anti-cavalry moat, towers at regular intervals, and booby traps in front of the trenches. Vercingetorix's relieving army arrived quickly, yet concerted coordinated attacks by both the defenders and relievers failed to oust the Romans. After numerous attacks, the Gauls realized they could not overcome the impressive Roman siege works. At this point, it became clear that the Romans would be able to outlast the defenders and that the revolt was doomed. The relieving army melted away. Vercingetorix surrendered. In the span of 8 years, Caesar had conquered all of Gaul and part of Britain. He had become fabulously wealthy and achieved a legendary reputation. The Gallic Wars provided enough gravitas to Caesar that subsequently he was able to wage a civil war and declare himself dictator in a series of events that would eventually lead to the end of the Roman Republic.